So now is the time for Aaron and Philip, if you would like to share with us some thoughts behind the creation of your books. And I will translate like by paragraph. So I will be making notes, so you can just like talk for a little while, and then I will interpret to the audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Phil, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having us from all the way across the world. This is really special. We apologize that Aaron and I are actually in two separate locations because I have COVID this week. So I'm feeling just fine. And it's great to be here. I was looking forward to it all week. So
Okay,
we're here.
I will just do this part quickly. 就是谢谢大家今天参加这个活动，而且是在世界的另外一端，真的是一个非常难得的机会。那很抱歉，就是我跟太太没有办法在同一个房间，因为我确诊了，但是我的身体感觉都还 OK。然后我们两个一整周都非常期待这个活动。
So we're here, I suppose, to talk a little bit about Amos McGee and a little bit about how we make all of our books and the thoughts that we have about bookmaking. I think we'd like to begin first by talking about the first book we ever made together, which was A Sick Day for Amos McGee.
OK，那今天就是主要是想要跟大家来聊一下我们做的两本麦基先生的书，然后分享我们就是创造我们的书的背后的一些想法，还有过程。那当然第一本要讲的就是麦基先生请假的一天。
Amos McGee, it was the first book we ever made together, and as we were making it, I don't think we ever dreamed that more than 10 years later we would be talking to people in Taiwan about this little book that that we really never dreamed that it would sell beyond our closest friends and family. That's how small of a book we thought this would be. And all these years later, we're still talking about it.
OK，
Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry，那就是今天要讲的就是我们先讲的是麦基先生请假的那一天。那这一本书是我跟 Erin 就是第一次合作，然后10年前我们合作的时候，真的以为就是只有亲朋好友会捧场，没有想到就是我们真的连做梦都没有想到，有一天我们10年之后还会在这边跟台湾的朋友分享这本书，真的是完全超乎我们的想象。
Because we didn't believe that the book would have a very long life and it wouldn't necessarily have a very big reach, we decided to keep the book very small in every way. We wanted to make a book that was actually for each other. And we didn't worry about anyone else when we were making it. We just wanted to make each other happy as we were making this book. And so as I wrote the story, I actually wrote the story based on a series of images that I thought Aaron would like to illustrate. Beginning here with the elephant playing chess with the old man.
Okay, great.
And then this sequence here. Each image was something that I thought Aaron would just really like to illustrate and something that I wanted to see her illustrate. And we didn't really think bigger than that as we started this book.
那就是这本书的寿命居然可以这么长，然后不管是在国际还有美国的读者这么多，真的是像我刚刚说的，超乎我们的想象。因为我们一开始真的没有这样子的设想，所以我们就是想的是很小很小，就是完全没有觉得这本书是要给其他人看。其实我们就是为了互相彼此而创作，就是我们两个都只是想要，就是对方看了这个故事，看了这些图，觉得很开心而已。那我是抱着这样子的想法去写这个故事，然后我就想说，我觉得 Aaron 很会画哪几张画，会画哪一些图。那我们就是完全是靠着这个想象，然后也就是希望他就是很享受创作的这个过程，然后去做这一些图跟创作这个故事。
And so one more thing I'll say before I pass it over to Erin is that 15 years later, we've made over 20 books now together, but we've tried to make all of our books in a similar way as Amos McGee. We've tried to make every book very personal, and we've tried always to make each other happy as we're working and try not to worry about what other people will love. I think as long as you can find love and care for the thing that you're making, there is a good chance that your audience will love it and care for what you've made as well.
That's so lovely. 那就是我在说最后一件事情，然后我就会pass 给 Aaron，就是现在这个15年的过程之间，我们两个其实一起创作了20本书，但是我们其实就是希望保持着就是麦基先生请假的那一天的一样的理念，就是我们还是抱着就是我们的创作主要是为了互相我们两个都很喜欢，然后也很关注的就是很关注的让我们创作觉得很开心的部分。然后我们尽量就是不要去想说，就是我们做这些东西会不会令别人会不会带来很多的愉快？但是其实我们是觉得我们两个自己非常非常喜爱，然后对彼此带来非常多的快乐。其实我觉得这个快乐是会感染到别人的，然后他们就是会这种波动会波动到别人的内心里面。嗯哼，And Aaron？
So first, I'd like to say hello to everyone, and that I'm so happy to be here. And the longer I've been sitting here, the happier I've been getting. I only hope to one day see some of you or meet some of you in person. So thank you very much for inviting us. This is a thrill.
那就是首先就是先跟大家问候一下，然后真的非常非常开心可以坐在这边。刚刚活动一开始的时候，我一边做，然后就越来越觉得更加的开心。真的很希望有一天就是可以就是实际见到所有的人，然后也非常谢谢就是小卢就是邀请我们做这个活动。嗯哼。
Um, the other thing, I guess, so I'm here to talk about Amos, and like Phil said, we'll talk about the first book a little bit, but I can speak to the art, the way the art was made for both books. And in that way, this book was made with wood block printing and pencil. And I can show you a couple of things for that. So what I do there is take a piece of wood.
Mm-hmm.
And I use a knife and carve it. And while you're translating, I'll show the materials.
那我就是先跟大家，就是刚才 Philip 讲了一下故事，那我就在这边先跟大家分享一下，就是绘画的部分是怎么样创作的。那我主要就是用木板的雕刻跟铅笔来创作。那像我就会就是现在荧幕上面这些都是木板雕刻，然后我就会就是拿一块一块这样子的木板，然后用刀跟这个 U 型的工具，就是开始在上面作画。
So after that, I add ink to each block and print it on paper. And this is what a print looks like before I draw it on top. So it's just the color, no pencil.
那我刚刚就是给大家看到，就是我做完那个雕刻了之后，我就会在那个木板上面上油墨，然后上了油墨之后，就会把它印到纸上面。那印到现在这样看起来，就是已经有上色，但是还没有在用铅笔在上面作画。
I make a lot of mistakes and I have to sketch a lot, and often these sketches are on the back of prints that I didn't like enough to draw on top of. So it's a slow process.
那就是在这个过程里面，我也会常常就是会一直吐槽，然后会有很多问题。那我也需要就是一直不断重复的素描。那这个中间其实是一个蛮冗长的一个过程。
Both of these books took about a year and a half to make. I think we both thought the second book would be faster because I have more experience now, but we had a kid and it got tricky.
OK，那这两本书大概都是花了1年半的时间去制作。那其实我们两个那个时候觉得第二本书应该会比较快，因为我现在应该是一个很有经验的绘者了。可是其实我们家还是现在有一个就是有小孩，所以这个过程就其实还是很长。
The other thing I'd say is that we were very concerned that the second book would be as good as the first one, and if not as good, at least we really hoped to not disappoint the fans of the first Amos. I think that's why it took us so long to make a second book, because we never expected the success of the first book. I think we had met so many people actually around the world who liked the first book. We really felt like we had to be very careful about the second one.
那另外一个就是因为第一本书真的可能太成功了，所以我们就是在做第二本书的时候也有一点担心，就是会不会没有像第一本这么好，而且我们就是也不希望让读者失望，因为做了第一本书之后，我们真的跟就是世界各地很多的读者都有见面过，所以就是第一本书的成功真的。这超乎我们的意料，但是所以我们在做第二本书也是更加的小心，就是希望它也是可以就是对大家有一样的就是正面的影响。
Phil, what do you think?
I think I have something I'd like to mention here, which is that I think every book we make, we believe that this time will work faster. That instead of taking a year or 2 years or 3 years, or once I actually took 6 years to make a book, every time we think, okay, now we know what we're doing, and now we'll finally be able to finish a book in just a few weeks. And it never happens. And one of the reasons it never happens is because Erin and I try very, very hard to make our worlds feel real to people. And in order for that to happen, every single detail has to be cared for. And it takes a long time, and it takes a lot of frustration sometimes.
那Aaron 就问Philip 说，那他觉得他对刚刚的发言有什么想法？那Philip 就说，他说每次我们在做书的时候，现在其实我们都会设想说，哎，我们现在很有经验了，书应该可以做得更快更快。可是其实我就是从来就是我们都快不起来，然后我中间甚至有一本书就是做了快要6年，那就是这种好像我们的幻想就是几个礼拜可以做完的事情，就是真的永远都没有办法发生。可是其实另外一点就是，我跟 Aaron 我们两个都希望我们的书里面呈现的感觉是非常的，就是对于读者来讲，他还是感觉很真实的。所以呢，我们里面就是还是必须要去关注很多书的大大小小的细节。那所以因此就是它的那个过程，就是还是一直都快不起来，而且中间有的时候也是会非常有很多懊恼或充满挑战的时刻。
You gave her a lot of work. I would also add to that I think the thing we try to do with each of our books, but especially Amos, is respect the feeling in each of them. And what I mean by feeling is the emotion that we try to convey in each book. And we do that because we're trying to respect a child's point of view in learning to navigate those emotions. Make sense?
OK，那我还想要补充一点，就是我们在做每一本书，但是当然尤其是做麦基先生的书的时候，我们都希望就是可以更加的，就是尊重还有关怀我们每一本书里面的一些想要呈现的感觉。那我所谓的感觉，它就是 有包含心情、感情，或者是我们想要表达的讯息，因为我们希望书里面它还是可以就是传达一些儿童的观点，还有儿童他可能在面对世界的时候的各种大大小小的挑战。嗯哼。
One last thing I'll add is that in all of our books, Aaron and I are committed to making things by hand. And so we don't use the computer really in any way in the making of our books. We don't adjust the color in the computer. We don't, um, add things, subtract things, put things together. So if an image doesn't work at our table, maybe you're halfway through and you realize you've done something wrong. We have to start from the beginning, and that slows down the process too. But I think when things are made by hand, the finished result often feels more real and alive to people.
那我最后就是还有再补充一点，就是 Erin 跟我们两个的工作流程里面，我们就是创作的过程是完全不用电脑的，我们就是几乎的，我们全部都是用手工，就是包含就是颜色的调整，要加东西或者是要去除东西，我们都是用手去制作，所以有的时候也会做到一半的时候。出了一点差错，我们又必须要从头开始。那当然，这个过程它就是会让我们整个做书的流程慢了下来。可是我觉得这样子就是手工的质感，也是让我们的书里面它的这个整个的宇宙观，就是可以感觉更加真实的一个元素。
好，我这边有一些是，我就用中文，这边有几个是这次那个报名单里面大家的问题，把它做一点整理哦，然后做一点分类。那我想先问一下，这个是要替青燕老师在问的哈，因为我们译者青燕老师有问说，为什么这两本书隔了10年？因为第一本的小读者都长大了哈，长大了，所以可不可以请做先回答这个问题？
好。Okay, so we have Olive has compiled questions from the audience, and one of the first ones is actually from the translator of the book, and he asked like why was there such a long gap between the two books because the young readers now are now adults or teenagers.
Yeah, well, we were just very surprised that the first book had such a long life and that it was so popular around the world. And we were very nervous to ruin it for people. We love Amos very much. He's almost like a family member to us, and so we felt like we didn't want to make any mistakes in moving forward with a new story. We had to really have a story that we loved, and we had to feel confident that we could understand all the reasons that people loved Amos and not just the reasons that we loved Amos. And it took us a while to understand all the reasons that other people loved Amos as well, I think. Do you disagree, Aaron?
Well, let her translate first.
Okay, sorry. 那Philip 就先说，他说就是真的很讶异，就是第一本书居然它的寿命这么长，而且这么受欢迎，在世界各地的读者，所以我们其实他们其实非常的紧张，就是不希望就是破坏了大家对于 Amos 的想象。那我们两个，他跟 Aaron 都非常非常爱 Amos，他说像是家人的感觉，所以真的很害怕，就是犯任何的错误。那他们也就是希望这个就是第二本的故事是一个受大家喜欢的故事。那会受大家喜欢的故事，它是什么元素？所以他们也必须要先了解读者到底为什么这么喜欢 Amos。对，然后现在他就问Aaron 他的想法。OK，Aaron。
I think this book really changed our life. When we were making it, it was just the two of us in a tiny room together, and it often felt like we just weren't sure what was going to happen. And then it was successful, and we, we were published in different languages, and we met people from all over the world. And I think it took us a while to process that and feel capable of making a second one.
那Aaron 就补充了，就说就是第一本书其实真的是完全的，就是改变了他们的生命。因为他们第一本书就是两个人在一个小小的工作室一起做的，然后他们那个时候真的没有对书有任何的期待，不晓得会发生就是书出版之后会有什么样的回应。但是既然还可以就是翻译成这么多不同的语言，然后这么受欢迎，然后他们也因此就是见到了世界各地的读者，所以这些东西其实都是一种不一样的冲击。那他们也需要一些时间去消化别人对这个书的想法。
OK，
好，那我就听到第二个是我们在场有一个插画家刘珍秀老师，对不对？好，刘珍秀老师问的，他在题单上面有问说，他的故事是怎么想出来的？还有呢，里面有很多动物嘛，动物是写生还是凭印象塑造的？那我觉得这一题可以跟我们刚好线上有朋友在这边问一个问题，说也是国语实幼的陈老师，他说这个两本书可以发现说创作者很爱动物。那想知道他其他20本书是不是有相同的元素？然后呢，他觉得这个动物在人类生存当中有什么想法或经验，请他分享一下。好，我想这个是相关题目，我就把它放在一起，请教这个创作者。
Okay, so we have a second question, which comes from an illustrator. The illustrator would like to know, like, kind of your thought process behind the actual story. And obviously, from seeing these two books, it's clear to us that you really. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. So, in terms of the animals, do you illustrate the animals from like live sketching and observation, or does a lot of it also come from your imagination? And then we are following up with another kind of related question, which is like it's clear that you have a great love for animals. Does this theme also echo through like throughout all your other 20 books? I can also repeat the question if you can't remember all at once.
I remember the middle part and the 20 books animals part.
Yeah.
What was the first part of the question?
The first part is like just the thought behind the Amos books, behind the actual story.
Okay.
Like the inspiration for the story.
When we first started making Amos, we were very young, and Philip and I met each other when I was 16, so we were very, very young. And we made Amos together about 10 years after that. And Phil knew that I really loved drawing animals and people interacting, even in my personal work before I became an illustrator. And so he wrote that story for me because I think you liked looking at my drawings of animals and people, right, Phil? So what I like drawing between animals and people, and sometimes between two people, is that connection that you can find when two people share space, which is a funny thing to say over an internet meeting. But that is something that I really enjoy drawing, and then taking that connection and moving it through a book.
Okay, I will just do this part first.
Yeah.
那就是 Aaron 说，就是他们 他跟Philip 真的很年轻的时候就认识，他们16岁的时候就认识了。然后但 Amos 的书是大概他们认识10年，就是他们20多岁的时候做的。那他其实他自己非常喜欢就是画动物，还有动物跟人的互动，然后所以他觉得，因为 Philip 就是常常会在旁边看他，也很喜欢看他画画，所以就是为了他，因为知道他很喜欢画人跟动物的互动，所以就为他写了这个故事。那Aaron 又说了他自己很喜欢看动物跟人的互动之外，他也很喜欢看人跟人的互动，就是他很喜欢看到就是不同的就是动物或人。他们在共享一个空间里面的时候的那种关系，然后那种气氛，然后他说，但是这个东西现在我们在线上会议讨论的时候，好像又有点吊诡的感觉，对，但是他就是其实是很喜欢看到这种互动的关系跟感觉，也很希望在书里面就是把这种氛围、这种气氛把它呈现出来。嗯哼。
And then regarding the drawings of animals from life or from my imagination, so the answer is both. When I started learning how to draw all the way into my uh, young adult life,
嗯
the it was much harder to find a photo reference than it is now because we have computers everywhere, including in our pocket. Um, and because of that, you really had to learn the anatomy of animals, so you could learn how to manipulate them. And so I think some of the way I draw animals comes from studying them, whether it's pictures online or from books or watching. Actually, I do like watching videos of how they move in order for me to then make them move the way I want them to in a book, because I do manipulate the way that they can sit or can interact with Amos.
OK。那关于刚刚第二个问题，就是那个动物是我自己想象的，还是去素描的？就是其实两个都有。那当然，我就是最一开始学画的时候，网络还没有像现在这么方便跟普及，所以就是照片的这些素材，就是那个时候其实也没有那么好取得。那个时候我的确就是需要去学，就是身体的结构。构造，包括动物的身体构造，然后我才有办法去试着在我的画里面，就是帮他们呈现不一样的动作。那我的确也有就是比较细部的研究，就是动物的结构，然后也很喜欢看动物的影片，看他们怎么样动的。那我看到他们怎么样动，我才有办法在书里面帮他们，就是不管他们坐下来的姿态，或者是他们跟 Amos 一起动来动去的姿态，才会比较自然。嗯哼。
I think we're ready for another
OK，
question.
下一个问题。
那下一个问题是跟创作有关的，因为刚才那个丽她说她有示范她的那个创作方式嘛，所以这边有一位朋友周先生吧，他说水印木刻是用手压印的吗？还是用版画机去压印的？这是第一题。那第二个是他觉得他在第一本就是那个请假的那一本读到的是孤独的老人的议题，是不是创作里面想要谈的？那另外第三题是创作怎么分工，怎么样去协调？那我觉得这跟我们表单当中有个朋友说的，因为他讲到分工的问题，说这个故事有没有想过未来是那个艾琳写故事，菲利普画图呢，还是已经这么做了？好，我想就把它结合在一起问。
结合的是已经有没有这样子？
对对对，
好的。Sorry, this is there's quite a few parts to this question. So the
Okay.
first one will be the wood block printing. Is it hand press or do you still use a machine to press? And then the second part is in the first Amos book, the reader got a feeling of like a lonely elderly person. Is this also something that you wanted to, explore in the book? And then the third part is how do the both of you kind of balance or divide your workflow, and if there are also times where maybe you want Philip to do the illustration whilst Aaron do the text.
Phil,
want
do
to
you want
answer
to go?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. Do you want to go get my Baron?
Sure. While you talk.
Yeah. So I'm answering the first question about if I use a press or if I use my hands. Phil's running to get the thing that I use to make the prints. So the answer is that I still use, I do them by hand. And he's going to show you the tool that I use.
OK，那刚刚第一题就是关于那个木刻是手压印还是版画，就是现在 Philip 手上拿着的这个东西就是 Aaron 的工具，他就还是都是用手工用这个工具去压图的。And then the second part is the elderly.
Yeah. I'm going to say one more thing about the printing though. One of the reasons I do them by hand is because since I draw on top of them, I don't necessarily want the print to be as perfect as a press could make it.
OK，
Because sometimes I print lighter in some areas on purpose so that you can see more detail in the pencil work. So, for instance, if I make the rhinoceros's face a little bit lighter through printing by hand, it means that I can draw more detail on top.
OK，那Aaron 想要再补充一点，就是为什么他要用手压？因为用手压的时候，就是它比较可以，就是用不同的力道，所以就是不会每一个颜色都是像机器一样，就是很完美，还有很均匀的出来。那这个也是他就是一边在做的时候，因为他可能会想，比如说像是犀牛的部分，他可能会压的比较轻一点，颜色就会比较淡。那他之后在铅笔在上面绘画的时候，它其实在犀牛的脸部可以就是画出更多的细节。对，所以这个是为什么他要用手压的原因。
Phil, do you want to start the lonely one, or do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure that loneliness was necessarily the first thing on our mind as we were making this book, but it is something that has become a little bit of a recurring theme in a lot of our books. And a lot of times it's not necessarily loneliness as a bad thing. Sometimes it's actually loneliness or the feeling of being alone, and how it can be a nice thing. I loved being alone as a child, and I spent a lot of time alone as a child, and that's where I did a lot of my creative thinking and creative work. And even as an adult now, I do most of my work alone, unless Aaron happens to be there, and I like it. So there's sort of a balance, and I think that you can feel that balance in our books sometimes, where they can feel a little bit sad, but also a little bit happy at the same time.
Yeah，OK，那关于就是孤独老人，他说孤独，特别是孤独的这个议题，其实他们在创作的时候是没有特别想到这件事情，可是的确好像在他们的作品里面是可以看到一直出现，就是这种孤独或者是一个人的这种感觉，但是其实他不觉得孤独是一件不好的事情，他觉得独处应该是说独处这件事情，其实他小的时候也很喜欢自己一个人，然后他觉得他有很多就是思考或者是做他在想象的时候，其实他自己一个人的时候是有很多的空间。当然，有的时候现在 Aaron 也在旁边，那他也很喜欢，所以他觉得这个孤独或者是故事里面有的时候有一点好像有一点哀伤的感觉，它其实都是有一点平衡的，就是他感觉可能有一点点孤独或悲伤，但是其实里面都还是有一点点快乐或者是欢喜的心情的。
So I would add that now that I'm thinking about it, I think a lot of our books start out with a character that might feel a little lonely and then finds comfort in and seeks out their friends. And I think maybe that's an important thing to learn for anybody, but really for a child.
那 Aaron 就是补充了一下，他说他现在就是听到这个问题，还有听到 Philip 的分享，他也在就是思考这个问题。那他觉得其实他们的书里面的角色，常常有的时候好像的确是一开始的时候，他们感觉是比较孤单的，可是他们会自己去寻找自己的朋友。那他觉得这个其实也是一个蛮重要的，就是一个学习的过程，就是对任何人来讲都是，但是可能尤其特别是对小孩子来讲，这个过程是非常的重要的。And then the third question is about the division of labor.
Oh, so one thing that we never do is that I never draw into one of Aaron's pieces of art, and Aaron never draws into one of my pieces of art. But everything else we do pretty much together. No decision really gets made without the other person being consulted, even if it's not a book that we're supposed to be working on together. It's a book maybe that I'm supposed to be doing all by myself. I'm constantly talking to Erin, getting her advice on things. A lot of times I'll pick out a color palette for Erin's book at the start, or Erin will help me lay out my design for an image before I'll start. A lot of times we go to each other when we need help, and we always need help.
OK，那Philip 就说，就是关于刚刚大家问到的，就是他们怎么样分工的这个过程。那他是说，就是图画的部分，他永远就是不会去画 Aaron 的画，然后 Aaron 也永远不会就是去画他的画。但是除了这个之外，他们几乎所有的东西都是会一起分工的，即便可能有一些就是合作案，就是他们其中一个人而已，不是他们两个一起的合作的案子，他们都还是会互相讨论。所以有的时候，Philip 他有问题的时候，他就会跑去问 Aaron，就是请给他一点建议。然后有的时候 Aaron 在作画的时候，他也会帮他挑他的就是色盘。那Aaron 也会就是过来帮他。他在设计别的东西的时候，帮他确认一下这些设计的方向。他们就是你在创作的过程里面非常非常需要协助，所以他们都会互相协助对方。Aaron, do you want to add anything to this?
I don't think so.
Okay, okay, sure. Then we'll move on to the next question.
接下来是有问题是跟那个红气球，因为红气球好像是很多人想要问的问题。出现红气球有什么含义？我们表单上面有，然后上面有一位方妮也有在问哈，这应该是很多人的问题。到底红气球有没有什么特别的意义？
So a recurring question that we've been getting a lot is the meaning behind the red balloon. Does it have any symbolic meaning?
In the first Amos, there are a lot of references to other picture books that are popular here in the United States. The red balloon or balloons show up often in children's literature, really worldwide. And because Amos was my first book, what I was doing for myself was often making like a love letter to children's picture books because I love them so much that I felt so honored to make my first one. The other thing that I tend to think about it is that I feel like the balloon, as it moves through the story, is a narrator. And Phil and I also like to note that children always see it better than the grown-ups.
OK，那就是关于红气球的部分，就是我们在做第一本的麦基先生的书的时候，其实里面就是我是有意的，就是 就是参考很多就是在美国很受欢迎的绘本。那当然就是气球这个物件，它本身就是在世界各地的儿童文学里面，它也是常常的出现。但是最重要的就是我小的时候就真的非常非常喜欢绘本，所以我在做第一本书的时候，其实是就是我在向我小时候读过，还有我很心爱的那些绘本，就是致上一个我的致意。那在绘本在气球在书中飘动的时候，在每一页不同飘动的时候，我其实是觉得气球是有点像是一个说故事的人这样子的角色。那我们也常常我们自己会就是我跟菲磊会发现，就是其实小孩子他们看到红气球，他们往往是比大人就是更留意到红气球这个细节的。嗯哼，Philip, did you want to add anything to this?
Just that it's always it just makes me so happy to get that question because we've been getting that question in every country around the world now for a dozen years, and we've never really had an answer for it.
Okay.
And I think it was because it was just one of many things that we put into the book as we were making it, just because it made us happy while we were making it.
Uh-huh.
And there are other things like that as well in this book, that they were little things we were almost doing just for each other, and they made us happy. And it turns out that after 12 years, these little things are still making other people happy too.
That's so nice. It's very lovely to hear your thought process. 那就是菲利又在补充，就是说，他真的每一次听到这个红气球的问题，他都非常的开心，就是已经10几年了。然后，世界各地的读者都会问他们这个红气球的问题，但是到现在他们两个都还是没有一个标准的答案。但是其实书里面还有很多的小细节，就跟这个红气球一样。他们其实那时候做的时候也没有想那么多，只是想到说要怎么样让另外一个人，就是他们两个之间，就是带给另外一半，就是一个很好，就是就是带给他们快乐而已。所以其实做的很多东西就是为了他们两个人自己而已。但是就是看到这些东西居然可以也给别人带来这么多的快乐，他们真的觉得非常的高兴。嗯哼。Shall we move on to the next question?
OK， 那个我们线上有一个朋友 Joyce， 你要自己问还是帮你回答？你问到那个如果麦基先生退休之后，有没有想过会发生什么事情？你要不要自己问？还有没有什么第3本计划？是不是？还是我帮你问 ？OK， 好，他就是问说有没有这个关于麦基先生，如果他退休，有没有想过？因为他已经蛮老了嘛，如果最后退休之后会不会发生什么事情？还有他们有没有第3本的计划？因为既然有第2本嘛，有2就有3这样子。
Okay, so we have a question from the audience, Joyce, who wanted to ask, Amos must be also getting a little bit older than now. So, what would he do if he were to retire, and if there's any plans for the 3rd book?
Well,
he's never gonna retire.
I think if he ever stops being an employee at the zoo, he would immediately start volunteering at the zoo. So I don't think there's any danger of him ever not being at the zoo with his friends. We don't have a plan yet for a 3rd book, but we are talking about it. Much like with the 2nd book, we want to be very, very careful. I think now that we've made a 2nd one, though, it gives us a little bit more confidence that we could make a 3rd or a 4th, and still remain true to Amos's world.
那Philip 就是先说，他说他们两个都觉得，刚刚 Aaron 也说，他们两个说就是 Amos 麦基先生他应该永远都不会退休的。那即便就是动物园可能不再想要雇佣他的时候，他应该第2天马上就会去动物园当义工，就是他一定永远会在动物园跟他的好朋友在一起。那很确切的计划，第3本的计划，他们目前是没有定下来，只是说他们做了第2本书之后，就是的确也觉得。就是对他们建立了一些信心，觉得做了第2本也做得蛮不错。他们觉得 第3本跟第4本也是有可能的，因为他们现在觉得他们知道，就是抓住麦基先生的这个世界，然后也大概知道以后要怎么样往前面走了。对，就是可以让他的世界就是保持他这样子的宇宙观。Okay. Anything else to add, or shall we move on to the next question?
We can move on.
Okay. 好，周老师。
OK，那个小鱼在线上，你好像觉得他们第一本书看到动物在外面比较自然一点，对不对？你要不要自己问，跟作者有一些互动，让你自己问。
Hi, Philip and Erin. Thank you so much for making so sweet story for us. And when I see the first book, this picture, those animals, they look so naturally when they get on the bus. And wonder if you think the animals, they should be more free, because when people keep in the zoo, they are so limited, because so I think if you want to show people that we should be more friendly to the animals, yeah, that's my question. Is that clear?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wait, she should translate.
OK。
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't need it.
那就是读者问到说，就是非常，他首先先谢谢作者创造了一个这么温馨又充满可爱动物的故事，然后他觉得就是故事里面的动物看起来是蛮自然的，但是他们因为都一直关在动物园里面，不知道会不会想要他们就是可以在外面就是更自由的走动，然后因为平常他们都在动物园都被关起来了，然后会不会也是希望就是可以提醒，就是我们就是要对动物更加的友善。
So, in the United States, there are several books that were popular when Aaron and I were kids, or a little bit later when we were studying to become bookmakers. There were several books that were set in zoos. And when we were making our book, we really wanted to make ours a little bit different than those books. I'm thinking of a book like a book called Goodnight Gorilla, where it's a very sweet book, and it has a lot of similarities to our book. But one thing that's very different is that all of the animals are in cages, and they're all behind bars, and they can't go anywhere. They don't have any freedom. And our zoo is not like that at all. The animals can come and go. It's almost as if they come to work the same that Amos comes to work. And maybe at the end of the day, maybe they go home someplace else. I don't know. And so we wanted to make an entire environment that was about love and care. And in order to do that, the animals had to have freedom.
OK， 那他们两个以前就是sorry Philip, could you repeat the title of the book you were referencing?
Goodnight Gorilla.
Goodnight Gorilla, OK。那他们两个就是都说他们以前就是看了美国蛮多的绘本，那些绘本有一些就是也是设定在动物园一样，但是他们两个希望他们的动物园跟他们以前读过的动物园是不太一样的。Someone is holding up the book 那就是这本书《Goodnight Gorilla》是他们以前读过。那在那本书里面，就是其实动物都是关在笼子里面，然后他们真的是没有自由。但是他们希望他们觉得他们的动物园其实不是这个样子的。他们的动物就是每天都会来上班，其实他们跟麦基先生是一样的。那也有可能他们下班了之后，他们也有自己回到自己的家里面。其实他们的这个他们故事里面的环境，就是比较是充满关怀跟友情还有爱，就是他觉得是跟以前的，就是其他的动物园是非常不一样的。Aaron, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I have two things to add. The first is that one of the fun things about making picture books is that you get to edit the world down to where the reader can fill in the blanks and decide how the world of the book moves around and what those corners that I don't illustrate look like. And in Amos's world, it's magical, where the animals and the people communicate and live side by side in a harmonious way. I'll let you go there.
OK，
那就是Aaron 说他想要补充一点，就是他觉得做绘本是一个非常快乐的过程。那这个过程里面，其实你是可以把这个世界你是可以去调整它的，然后你可以留白，让读者自己去用他们的想象力去把这些空间充足，然后就像它的这些角落很多没有把它填满的地方，他觉得读者们你们可以自己用你们的想象力去感受，或者是去填满你们对他的一些温暖的想象。那他觉得他的这个书里面，就是 Amos 跟动物，麦基先生跟动物他们的相处是非常和谐愉快，他们也可以一起谈话，一起做很多很有趣的事情。
And so when the animals are able to move freely in Amos's world, and Amos treats them with such respect, I think my hope is that if you teach people that the things around you deserve your thought and respect, that you'll treat everything a little bit better, and that the world could get a little bit better for yourself and then the things around you. And so because Amos respects those animals and they respect him, and they're all moving through the world on their own, I think, I hope that it plants a little seed in a kid's mind that they should consider the people and the things around them.
那另外一点就是，在书里面，动物跟麦基先生他们，就是互动的非常的自由，非常的就是自然。那我也觉得，就是其实，在这个书里面，我们可以看到麦基先生非常的，跟动物他们互相了解，然后互相去，体贴。我觉得这个东西是非常的重要，就是在书里面可以感受到这种感觉的时候，我们也可以开始去关注你身边，然后去尊重，然后去给身边的人或者是动物多一点的关怀。那这个部分，我觉得其实就是在小朋友的心目中也是非常的重要。就是我觉得他们看了这个故事有这种感受的时候，我们可能也会在他们心中种下一点种子，让他们的就是他们的世界也会开始有一些小小的改变。
好，那因为是网络上面有一个，我想有一个是家长帮小朋友问的哈，那个在第二本书里面，那个后来那个麦基先生穿短裤了哈，为什么？很可爱，我觉得还是让小朋友那个提出来。那我想这个也是跟另外一个朋友，他也想知道，就是我们的译者。他说在上面有很多哔哔哔哦，因为在讨论说到底是谁发的声音，为什么要用这个部分？因为我们后来讨论说我们两个都有养狗哦，是不是像狗一样，时间到了就会来讨食？那是不是用那个小鸟在那边提醒麦基今天时间到了这样子？我想因为刚好是第二本的问题，我们就放在一起请教。
Okay, so now we have two questions for the second Amos book, and one I think is coming from one of our young readers in the audience who wants to know, like in the second book, Amos seems to feel a bit more relaxed because he's wearing shorts, not long pants. And the second question about the second book, also from Olive and the translator and others in the audience, is that there's the recurring beeping sound. And both Olive and the translator are dog owners, so they are used to dogs coming to them for food and almost acting like an alarm clock, like with their kind of beeping sound. But they were just curious what the beeping sound is from. Is it alarm, or are they coming from animals? What is it?
Oh, it's funny. The beeping sound is the bus's horn honking.
Okay.
Yeah, and it in the US, if you do a short beep beep, it's a friendly honk. So it's usually a little a hello. And I think the way Phil, I'm speaking for you now, Phil. I think the way Phil was thinking about it as he was writing is that that bus driver knew Amos was supposed to be on that bus and didn't see him. And I think he was giving a little, see you later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If you want to translate that, and then I'll answer about the shorts.
那就是那个 BB 声的部分，其实是主要是就是那个公车的那个声音，对，因为在美国就是如果你很快的哔哔哔这样子，其实它是一个比较就是友善的提醒的声音。那他觉得就是他说他帮老公说一下话，他说他觉得可能Phil 在写故事的时候，他觉得那个公车司机其实知道 Amos 麦基先生应该是要在公车上的，所以但是他又赶不上，所以公车司机就是又逼了几声，就是说 OK 好，就是我不等你了，拜拜这样子的感觉。And then about the shorts? Or you Philip wants to add anything to the sounds?
He's headed to the beach, so he's gonna go swimming. So he is feeling casual. It's a day off, or the afternoon off, anyways.
那关于就是麦基先生穿短裤的这件事情，他就说对，因为就是今天是一个假日嘛，所以就是他真的心情比较放松，所以就是可以穿着短裤就准备要去出游了。
OK， 好，那另外就是有一题是问到那个献给月亮先生的音乐中，主角本来的名字叫哈利特，后来却用了汉克的化名，然后这种性别的转换有没有什么特别的意思？好，然后第二个是，好，我们先问这一题好了，因为下一题是跟创作有关系的。
时间的部分，
对，还有时间。
我们把那个
对，我们时间只剩下一点哈，所以我们等一下很快的有几个题目会一起。好，那就是这个问到这个献给月亮先生的音乐之后，还有一个是针对艾琳的提问，那他为什么都一直用这个木刻跟铅笔做创作？是有什么原因吗？还是有什么个人特质要表达什么样的想法？
So this we'll just do like very quick questions and then we'll wrap up for today's session. And one is actually for regarding music for Mr. Moon, where the little girl, when she introduced herself to the moon, she wants him to refer to her as Hank. And the reader is curious if there's a meaning behind her wanting to change it into a more like into a male name. And then the second question is to do with the illustration process in general. Like Erin, you're always using woodblock printing and pencil. Is it like do you feel like a particular affinity, or is there a reason for you to continue always working in this process?
Do you want to start, Phil?
Sure. So in English, Hank is often used as a shorthand for Henry, and Harriet Henry is her name. And I think the reason we did that is that one of the themes of that book is being okay with who you are and not changing who you are for other people. And so Harriet, who of course wants to be known as Hank, is learning to assert herself and learning how to explain to people that she is a certain way, that she is a person who likes to be alone, that she is not somebody who wants to play her music for other people. And these are hard lessons to learn as a kid. And I think that as a kid, and as a grown-up, you find little ways to assert yourself and to give yourself confidence. And I saw that as just one of the ways that she was giving herself confidence.
Thanks. 那就是关于献给月亮先生的音乐的这个名字的改变的问题，就是在英文里面，Hank 就是其实是英文就是男生名字亨利的另外一个就是短称。那主角是叫哈利，就是 Harriet。那 Harriet 就是跟亨利这个名字其实还蛮像。那另外一个书的主题其实是在讲说，就是希望你就是自己找到一些自我认同。那这个包含就是不为别人而改变，所以其实就是小女生她自己在说她的名字是 Hank 的时候，她其实是自己就是凸显了她的就是去表达，她用她自己的方式去表达自己，表示她自己是她有她自己的个性，她喜欢一个人，她也不想要为别人表演。那这个就是这样子，就是他觉得换这个名字是他自己表达他自己自信的一种方式。那其实这种自我认同或者是凸显你的特质，有的时候是一件非常困难的事情。在儿童的生命经验是如此，那你到成人的时候，其实还是会有一样的经验。所以他觉得这个名字的转换，就是其实只是就是一种小工具，让他学会表达自己的自信。嗯哼。
So to answer your question about the printmaking
嗯哼。
and the wood blocks, I do printmaking in my books most of the time. I do woodblock printing in my books probably about half the time.
Mhm.
And the reason I do that is because um, I like it, but also I make really small marks with my pencil. With a very sharp pencil, I make really light, fine marks. And I like the way they look on top of the texture of the woodblock.
Mhm.
So it's not, I
Okay.
don't know.
Sorry, I will translate, but if you think of other things you want to add, I
Yeah.
will add to them. 那
Thank you.
Emma 就是先说，就是关于木板印刷的部分，它大概有一半的书都是用这种方式去做的。那当然，除了他很喜欢之外，就是他印刷了之后，他可以用就是他的非常非常尖锐的铅笔，在这个木板印刷上面的色块。就是去加上这些细节。那他很喜欢就是铅笔，就是覆盖在这个木板印刷的这种触感的这种感觉。对，所以大概他目前想到的就是这一些。Do you have
Um,
anything else you want to add?
yeah, so I think what I was trying to say at the end was that the woodblock printing requires a lot of planning, and I do think that sometimes that can get in the way of some of the storytelling for some of my other books that where the illustrations really need to feel a lot uh looser. And so I will I I'll I try to only use the printing when it's right for the story. In a story like Amos, he's so rigid. He has such a tight routine that those wood blocks with such clean lines, I think, I hope aid the story.
嗯哼。那另外就是要补充一点，就是因为做这个木板印刷其实是需要就是蛮长的，就是规划的时间。那当然，这个就是有一些缺点，就是有的时候可能在某一些故事需要不是这么就是严谨的这种故事，是需要比较放松一点的故事的时候，它可能就是又不是那么适合。所以我当然还是会考量，就是木板印刷是在一个适合它的故事的情况下面去使用这个创作的方式。那在麦基先生的部分，因为麦基先生又是一个很拘谨，然后又很喜欢他的每一天的就是生活规律是要很正常的一个人，我觉得这个就是木板印刷的这个部分，其实我希望就是表达出来是可以，就是为这个故事再增添几分不一样的感觉。嗯哼。
好，我想时间差不多了。
差不多嘛，哈。好，那我们就
对对对。
时间交给主持人。
那我们提问真的是非常多问题哦，大家非常踊跃，但是时间的关系，所以我们没有办法全部的回答到。那最后我想说，我们的执行长沙姐也在现场，沙姐要不要说几句话？
我先翻译一下给两位。So Erin and Philip, because we have still so many questions that we're not able to get to all of them, so we're gonna be wrapping up for our session today. But the chief editor, Miss Sa, is online, so I think she would like to say a few words.
嗨，大家好。那很高兴，麦基先生的这2本书，在10年之后，我们都可以把它出版出来。我觉得这是每一个编辑的梦想，能够出到这么好的书哦。那我相信他的好，大家也都能够体会到。那我觉得特别高兴的是，刚刚听到作者讲了那个他的儿童创作观，这也是我们那么喜欢儿童文学的一个主要的原因。他的作品真的就是非常完美的诠释了儿童文学的价值啊。那我希望今天早上大家都很享受这个充实的早上，谢谢大家。
Okay, thank you. So Miss Sa would just like to say that it's a real honor to publish both of these books. It's really a dream for a publishing house to really be introducing such great works to our readers here. And really, she was really touched by your how you shared your creative process and your thoughts behind the stories, which really perfectly captures the children's point of view. And this is exactly why children's literature is such a interesting and fascinating and continuously rewarding area for us to be participating in. So thank you so much.
Thank all of you. This was definitely the highlight of my week, especially since I spent my entire week alone in the studio recovering from COVID. So I have been looking forward to this for well, longer than a week, but especially.
And do you want to say anything, Erin?
Yeah, I would say thank you as well, and that it's really our honor to be published, so far from home. This is so fun.
那就是Philip 跟 Aaron 2个人都有，尤其 Philip 他就说，这是真的是已经超过1个礼拜的非常非常的期待，即便他就是确诊，而且他已经一个人在工作室关了1个礼拜，所以可能这边我们可以看到，他也不是永远都喜欢孤独的人，所以他真的非常期待这个活动。然后 Aaron 也说，就是非常谢谢，就是也是我们的荣幸，可以在就是世界的另一端有人阅读我们的出版作品，然后这个活动真的是今天非常非常的开心。